Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another Mythwind live stream. How's it going, Nathan?
It's good. Ready to
It's
go.
great. What was it? Friday the 3rd. I I believe if my math is correct, I believe we're 32 days away from launch. Is that math?
Yes, that's right. 30 days in September.
I'm not even. Yeah, okay, 30 days in September. Great. And yesterday we just hit a big milestone on Kickstarter, and that is 10,000 followers before launch. I was like months ago. That was actually my personal goal. Before we launch, we get 10,000 followers on Kickstarter, and I'm just looking at it right now. We're at 10,161, and BackerKit begins their pre-launch advertising on Monday. So very excited. I think the momentum has been great. Um, as always, hey,
Now
Oh,
that
sorry, go ahead.
uh, now that we've hit your goal, we can
I
stop.
know we can just nobody sign up anymore. No, now my new goal, as I was telling Nathan, 20,000. So hey, thanks for joining in, everyone. We're gonna get to a lot of questions that you have had at the end of our podcast live stream, whatever this is, all of the above. And so if you have any questions, make sure to post them in live stream, either YouTube or on Facebook, and we will try to get to them. But before we do, I think it'd be helpful if we kind of walk through a little bit of. I did up a little pitch deck for my boss on Mythwind, and I figured it's kind of a fun thing for us to do a little refresher on what is Mythwind, kind of the big overview. And so I don't know if you can, I guess you'll be able to see this in a delayed sense, Nathan. The first screen here, I just want to make sure that it's showing up. Yeah, it is showing up perfect. Uh, our kind of our one line pitch, which is kind of consistently being, I don't know, being wordsmithed in a way. Mythwind is an asymmetrical and cooperative board game where you live the life of an adventurer and pioneer in a whimsical, fantasy, persistent world. Okay, it's an asymmetrical cooperative board game where you live the life of an adventurer and pioneer in an asymmetrical, sorry, whimsical, fantasy, and persistent world. This has changed a little bit. You'll notice we've kind of moved away from the language of open-ended and into persistent world, even though they kind of conjure up some of the same things. Maybe we can speak to that in just a moment. But there's this story here, and Nathan, I don't know if you can you see what's on screen right now, or are you going in blind here?
I'm blind, but go ahead and cue me up.
Okay, so I'll read the story here, and then I'll let Nathan speak to it because he's the one who wrote this. Here's kind of the pitch that's at the beginning of the rule book. On an inconspicuous day, a chance encounter with magical sprites has led to an invitation to come to their valley. The sprite's home has fallen into disrepair and they need outside help to restore balance. The sprites hope that you are the thoughtful settlers they need to help the valley thrive. Dot, dot, dot. Okay, Nathan, what was going on in your brain when you're thinking through this story here?
Well, I wanted to be sure that the players were invited into the setting that they're going to be changing. So I wasn't interested in making a game where you show up and take over something, or making a story rather where you show up and take over something. Rather, that is something that you're doing collaboratively and at invitation, and with that as a starting point, that informs kind of how you decide to play the game. And there will be points where you're choosing between like doing what maybe is more in the sprite's interest and doing what is more in the interest of productivity and efficiency and invention and that kind of a thing. So yeah, I think it puts the players in kind of a unique position, and it also sets up this whole idea that you're not the first beings there. There's a whole history of magical beings, and they're, you show up and there's already foundations from buildings that used to be there, but no sign of the people that used to live in those buildings. So all of it kind of hints at this past history that you get to discover as you play as well.
Yeah, and the idea of being invited, I think, is key, especially as I think the board game community itself is becoming more aware of this like really overarching colonizing theme that's in so many board games, and how kind of inherently destructive a lot of that process was. There's a lot of language, and this is something that I'm even aware of as we're reading this. A lot of language that's crossover, but we want to be, as Nathan's saying, we want to be very careful to note that there's a strong invitation, and it's really this symbiosis of working with the magical inhabitants of the valley, and that's like really key for us because it's not like you're moving in and you're going to oppress them. It's really this working with them to actually have this mutually beneficial journey. Okay, so story. We have four. What I'm calling right now are the four innovative gameplay pillars, and here's the four. Let me read through them, and Nathan, feel free to interject anytime, or we can just chat through them at the end. First one, persistent world. So each session of Mythwind impacts the world and the player's progression. Second, asymmetrical characters. Players choose a unique character with their own way to contribute to the town. Third, cooperative town building. You work together to build a unique home. And lastly is an immersion narrative. A story develops organically through branching events and adventures. So we have persistent world, asymmetrical characters, cooperative town building, and an immersion narrative. These are kind of four pillars that kind of make up Mythwind. Nathan, speak into any of that.
Well, I think they're all kind of great hooks on their own, So I think the reason that they're pillars is because they appeal to maybe different kinds of gamers. We're coming off of a Kyrgios where that was a major story-driven game, and so people who may really be into that game because of they want to be part of a story may also be interested in Mythwind for the same reason. It's a different kind of story unveiling in this, where you kind of have less control of when the story happens in a way, and you're probably less clear of where the story is even going necessarily. And afterwards, what I imagine is, people who have played and they look back on their playtime, not when they're done because there's no end, but when they've played for a while and they look backwards, there'll be kind of like this patchwork feeling of the story, which is kind of how we look back at our own lives, where these sort of little moments exist. And if you're playing with someone cooperatively, maybe those are the things that you remember from the gameplay. Is like, well, remember when we built this and so showed up, and I'm trying not to spoil anything, but like, maybe a couple of actions you did triggered like an event to happen, kind of a thing. So I think all four of those pillars, they all fit together really nicely, but they can also hopefully reach out to a different kind of a gamer who will enjoy that hook specifically.
Yeah, another piece on the emerging narrative and how it's maybe different than like a kind of classic campaign scenario is that the narrative reflects less so like clear, do you decide to do this or decide to do this, and more we want it to kind of reflect the choices that you're making in town itself, right? The choices that you're making to develop your community, and in that sense, I think we're trying to kind of hook into the organic nature of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to kind of keep going back to Kyrgios, but Kyrgios very much was like you make a choice of kind of where you want the story to go, like a choose your own adventure. Whereas in Mythwind, the choices you're making while you play is what will direct the way the story goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just a couple, some beautiful artwork that I'll just kind of scroll through here. and some wonderful renders that our graphic designers working up. And hey, October 5th, that is our Kickstarter launch. We are excited about that. So just a little brief overview of Mythwind itself, and just excited, just to kind of catch you all up. And so today there's a handful of things that I want to work through, and a little high flyover. I want to talk a little bit about the different pledge levels. A little bit about kind of this early bird that I announced on Facebook and Instagram yesterday. Some different stretch goals thoughts that we have internally, some add-on thoughts that we have, and then want to get to a bunch of questions. So as always, hey, if you have questions, write them through. But before we get that, kind of a high flyover of how we're envisioning pledge levels. There's like three kind of core boxes in a sense of what we're doing. Maybe not core is not the right word, but we have our main game, Mythwind, which will include 4 character roles, the town board, kind of everything you need to play the game with up to 4 players, and 4 unique characters. And we have a whole lot of fun stuff on that. Our Kickstarter page is actually being built right now, and it looks gorgeous. So that's kind of that's the main box. So really, if you pledge anything, you'll at least pledge that. And then we have a 5th player expansion, and this 5th player expansion is going to include some event cards, some adventure cards, some more kind of story content. But it's also going to include a completely unique character that you can kind of add into your main gameplay experience, and either just kind of rotate it through, or you can actually play with up to 5 players with that 5th player expansion. And Nathan, I don't know if you want to share what we're doing with the 5th player expansion, or rather what we're not. What we don't know what we're doing. Nathan doesn't know this cue, I don't think.
No.
Okay, no worries. So everyone out there might think that this is laziness, but I actually think it is a wonderful opportunity to make kind of the Kickstarter special. So we're actually going into the 5th player expansion without having designed the 5th player expansion. So we know that we're going to create it, but instead of going through the, we have a bunch of ideas of what we would want to include in a 5th character. What we're going to do is actually leverage our Kickstarter community, and throughout the campaign, we're going to have you play as art director and game director on a direction that we want to go in for that 5th player. And that gets me really excited, because I think too often on campaigns, on Kickstarter campaigns, is that the company has something and we give it to you, and either you buy it or you don't buy it. But I really do believe that there's a magic in Kickstarter of actually inviting the community, inviting you into the creation process. And so we've lined up our artists, our 3D modeler, to actually create work during the process. So you guys will get to be the art director, and within reason. We're not going to name this character Bodie McBoatface. That happened, right? With like a public vote.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
that's right.
So we're going to curate some of the options, but really at the end of the day, it's going to be you that decide the art direction, and even some of like the gameplay direction. At the end of the day, it will be Nathan and I designing it, but we really want to invite the community into that creation process during the Kickstarter, and I'm excited for it, for that aspect.
I'd be interested in hearing mechanical suggestions, because obviously that is one of the pillars of the game we talked about. And we have a bag builder, we have a polyomino placer, we have a deck explorer. The merchant's sort of the least form, but probably like a set collection type thing. So I would be curious to hear what the community is looking for in a 5th player, and what kind of play experience they want to have. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it has to connect thematically with whatever that role will be. But yeah, super curious to hear what people latch onto.
Yeah, and something that we're going to actually do, and I don't know if I talked about this last week on on the platform. But each of our characters are going to have like a different difficulty rating. Yeah, we did talk about this, I think, last week, right? And so, I think that will kind of play into the character itself. And maybe we do a weight rating. I don't know. I think a difficulty, like a 5-star difficulty rating, might be actually easier uh, to kind of digest. But yeah,
I think the goal is that if you are wanting to get into the game, you have a clear understanding of which characters are most challenging to learn,
exactly.
or least challenging to learn.
Yeah, and so it's it even further tailors the experience to the player. So we're excited about that. So we have our core box, four roles. We have this 5th player expansion that kind of includes some more gameplay content. So that's all the like gameplay content that will be for sale, and then we have our miniatures box, and the miniatures box, we have this like really cool kind of sliding box, but it's gonna have like a plastic window so you can see the miniatures. There's gonna be a nice little game tray that they can fit snugly in. You can paint them. We're looking into pre-painted options, and I think for that, they'll come unpainted, but the pre-painted option will be a question mark about how many people would be interested in it. And so we have the miniatures expansion, which I think we're going to call magical miniatures, Mythwind magical miniatures. Kind of sounds fun. And then those are kind of going to be our 3 different kind of pledge levels. I guess there will be a 4th being like an all-in, but we have the core box plus a 5th player expansion, the core box 5th player expansion, miniatures, and then the all-in, which includes all of the content, which will be kind of we're gonna do a lot of fun things with Mythwind, which is cool, but something that we want to offer as I don't know how I necessarily feel about Kickstarter exclusives. Typically, I don't love Kickstarter exclusives, but I do want to kind of like honor the people who have been on the Mythwind journey since day one, or whatever, are joining up to day one, and that's with a free early bird giveaway. And I'm not too sure on the timeline, 48, 72 hours. At the beginning of our campaign, where we're going to give away an event card pack. It's going to be like a small thing, 6 or 10 cards, just with a unique story that won't be sold after Kickstarter. We might, do some giveaways after Kickstarter, but it'll be a Kickstarter exclusive. And if you miss that early bird, you'll probably be able to pick it up for a couple bucks. But that, just as a fun thank you to, hey, thanks for being on this journey with us. Thanks for, you get to experience something that no one else who buys the game in retail or after the Kickstarter will get to experience. Cool. Okay, went through those. Awesome. One thing I do want to speak about is do you remember what we're calling our stretch goal mini expansion, Nathan?
Uh,
I had a name, and actually I
no,
might have
winds and something, or
oh
something in water or
yeah,
something.
stretch goal. What? Oh, you know what? I've been going. I haven't actually ran this name by you yet, but I'm right now in my mind. It's the Winds of Magic, which might be a little bit
Right.
too cheesy, but the Winds of Magic mini expansion, and Nathan and I we spent a couple. Well, we've kind of been batting around. Okay, what do we want for stretch goals? How's this going to work in our Kickstarter campaign? Just what do we want to do? And the reality is, a lot of Kickstarter campaigns feels like we withhold content and then we give it back for stretch goals, and that doesn't sit well with either of us. And so what we want to do is create like a mini expansion that I think we're gonna run this as like the first set of stretch goals, just so that hopefully it gets unlocked. But basically, it's a mini expansion that's going to come with a little bit of everything. We're going to create new artwork, kind of new beautiful artwork for it. There's going to be some new season tiles, some new like kind of season events, new adventure, new event, new goal cards, maybe a couple new buildings, maybe a new like mystery envelope, and so it's going to be like a little mini condensed expansion that we want to give to all the backers for free, assuming we hit our stretch goals. And then we'll sell it as whatever it is, like a $20 expansion post Kickstarter campaign. And so I'm excited about that. I don't know, Nathan. I think we can tell some a unique story with that. Hey.
Yeah, exactly. I think that for a lot of the extras, kind of the nice little extra bit of flavor will be some story in there, and to be clear, kind of circle back on what we spoke about earlier, the event deck is where the story comes out of. So you're kind of seeing the story as you pull stuff off of the deck. And so that also makes it really easy to add in story to that event deck. You've got these cool little stories that are tied into maybe new mechanics that you see, or a new board you see, or a new character you got, or whatever it might be. And they'll get their own kind of cool little backstory or adjacent story to them, kind of thing. So yeah, that's I think what we have in mind.
Yeah, it's really neat. Cool. So running through the pledge levels, we're still fine tuning what we want to offer as add-ons. I think we're going to be receptive to some of the community's feedback for that, and we're getting some quotes right now on some unique elements. Excuse me. So we'll talk about that in a bit, but I think we should get to some questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first question wasn't asked on either of the places I elicited questions from. It was asked on Board Game Geek, which I guess I should have asked for questions. And I think it's a great question, and I think people are going to just kind of come up and say that. There's a whole thread on Board Game Geek, and the thread is titled, "What is the win condition of this game, or in this game? What is the win condition in Mythwind?" Here's his question, or his comment. "I know the game is cooperative or solo, and sorry, this is Frank K on Board Game Geek. I know the game is cooperative or solo, and that the state changes over many games, correct, but what is the win condition? Question mark. Whether it's completing a curse in Seventh Continent or an adventure in Robinson Crusoe, I still expect there to be something I'm trying to achieve and a catharsis that comes with success." The reason I want to speak about this is because this is actually a point of topic that Nathan and I we keep on coming back to, and in a very real way, Mythwind goes against the current of board games, where there is a neat end goal that you complete. Even in a big box game like Gloomhaven, right? There's a scenario that you either win or you lose, and if you lose, you have to do it again, and so you win or you lose, and then there's eventually no more scenarios to win or lose, and so even in really big games, you have these experiences. But the thing I think that makes Mythwind unique is the sense that it is a persistent world, and so we're not trying to capture an end state per se. So really, I've been very transparent since day one. The genesis, the idea of this game and how it evolved really started with this honestly, with me sitting on the couch playing Stardew Valley with my wife, and having a chill experience. She's doing her own thing on her farm. I'm doing my own thing. We're kind of running around. We each have our own kind of mini goals, and we're accomplishing them. But there is no like end state. There's these goals along the way, but the experience is actually in the journey. It's not as much in the destination. It's in the journey, and what we're trying to achieve with Mythwind is capturing that feeling of Okay, yeah. So what is the experience along the way? What are the stories that are told along the way? The decisions that are made, these kind of mini objectives, the secrets that are unraveled along the way. And that's the vibe and I would say the catharsis that's going to be in Mythwind. It's the catharsis of that progressing, right? That the consistent progressing, that kind of persistent unlock, that persistent changing of the world. And I don't know. That's kind of where I'm coming from. Nathan, maybe you can share your experience because I know this has been a question that you've asked many times. Also,
Yeah, I mean it's a different route to an endorphin hit, and I do enjoy a game where you are building. So like the thing I've been playing a lot of recently is Minecraft for the first time, and conceptually, it never really made sense to me as far as like a hook until I started playing, and I was like, especially because I'm playing in survival mode, I see how much kind of work it goes into actually building different things in it. And so inevitably, I'm like, I want to show like my kids, and they're great to show because they're actually enthusiastic about it. If I mention it to my wife, she's like, "Great, you're Minecrafting, way to go." Um, but I mean, I even there, I kind of go back and forth a little bit with like, how much tension do we want to introduce into the game that is um, interjected? Because in survival mode, you do have creatures you have to watch out for, and it's not that they are a huge threat necessarily, but enough that they, really give you some urgency in working on what you're doing. So that question does definitely always kind of loom over this experience for me. Like I'm constantly questioning, like, do we need Mythwind to have a bit of that external threat, or is it enough that it's just about building and growing? And yeah, it's interesting because like literally, I think every cooperative game I've played, probably, unless it was like an abstract, but if you play like Robinson Crusoe, if you play Pandemic, like you're playing against the board very much so. Like you're trying to survive or you're trying to defeat the pandemic or whatever it may be. This is very different. This is like kind of working with it, and there will be occasionally two steps forward, one step back, but you're not there's not necessarily an adversary that you're against.
yeah,
So
Nathan,
yeah,
I actually think that's a really helpful way for us to begin framing Mythwind, where we say, hey, in the majority of cooperative board games, you actually are working with people to play against the board. But Mythwind, you're working with people to almost like work with the board. And
yeah,
so it's instead of being against the board, you're with the board. And that is an interesting hook. And hey, 100% realize for some people, they might not be able to do kind of that sandboxy experience, and they're gonna check out because they want that I either win or I lose this gameplay session. And you know what? That's okay. Not every game is for everyone. But I think that there's enough people who are hungry for a unique board game experience, and this is gonna kind of like really hit that. It's gonna hit that, and so yeah, this is a response that Eric Chow had in the Board Game Geek, and he's trying to kind of summarize one of my answers. And he said, so basically, there is no end game scenario then. You end the game whenever you feel like it or whenever you want to restart the game. Would it be fair to compare it to a sim type game where various little goals and challenges pop up every now and then, but you can choose to keep playing your persistent world as long as you want? And I would say yes, Eric. It would be fair to compare it to that. And we do have, it's not. I want to be clear. It's not a you jump into this world and you're not given direction. No, we do kind of provide a direction. It's not kind of necessarily linear direction, but we also do have kind of unique challenges that pop up and kind of in some ways ultimate goals that are built into the mechanics, at least for the core box. The fifth player expansion and the Winds of Magic expansion will expand on some of those goals, but there is a sense of of growing and actually working towards something. For those of you who are out there who need that, okay, am I on the right path? Am I checking off enough boxes? Yes, there's going to be boxes, metaphorical boxes to check off so that you know that you're progressing. And hey, I'll be honest, I'm actually probably one of those people. uh,
I think that open-endedness too, in combination with the expansions, is really an area of kind of like new ground in a way. Because if this game is successful and we get to release more
yeah,
expansions, every time we do it, we have to sort of ask the question, like, when is this expansion relevant to the player? Do we introduce it as soon as you set up? Or do we have people who have played 3.5 game years into the
mm-hmm,
game? Do we need something that they can augment their experience then, kind of a thing?
yeah,
So it really can be sort of this thing that just kind of keeps building and building and building if we have enough success that we can add roles that maybe are not relevant to a town that is like just brand new, but maybe when is a mayor introduced, for example, and so
yeah.
when would that role be introduced? That kind of a thing. So there's really kind of cool opportunities that I think will reveal themselves just because of the how we've structured the game.
And I think that's actually something for us, to keep in mind with the Winds of Magic mini expansion. Um, and as I'm thinking, Stardew Valley, the video game, had a big update last year, 1.5 update, and so it introduced a lot of like end game content. But they've had other expansions or updates that introduced different beginning states. So you can start on an island farm instead of like a regular farm in Stardew Valley. And it's interesting because, what you're saying is we can actually, okay, what kind of experience do we want to tailor this expansion to, right? Do we want to maybe change the starting space, give people different options in how they begin a new game of Mythwind, begin a new adventure, or do we want to have like a whole set of like saying high level content that gets unlocked later? And I think that's so much fun for the potential. And here's the thing, and I really can only draw from video games when I think of these types of experiences like Skyrim or Mass Effect, or any of these really big kind of ongoing worlds, or Destiny actually is kind of like these games of service experiences where they release new content. And people approach these kind of new content drops in probably like two different ways. World of Warcraft would be another one, is that they either kind of once they finish all the content from this latest release, maybe they'll keep on playing for a bit, but they largely set the game aside, and then a new content is dropped, and they pick up where they left off, and then they push through, they discover, they unlock all the new content. Or there's new content that's dropped, and it's like, hey, you know what, instead of just carrying from where I left off, I'm actually going to start fresh and I'm going to kind of work through the whole game again. And that, I think, is a real fun space that we can work in with Mythwind.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that was one question, Nathan. one question. That wasn't even one of the questions that people asked, which is actually
I know.
well, someone did ask that. This is fantastic. Because I think these questions are getting at the heart of what people are wanting to hear about. So I'm mindful of our time. I don't like to push these live streams for more than like 30 minutes. So but I do want to maybe jump to one or two of these questions. And I'll just do the first one. I don't have who wrote these questions, and they're not in any specific order. I did not curate them, so it might be a little bit of like hit and miss. But this first and maybe last question: how long on average will a game turn take? And how much time, in game time, will pass during this turn? Okay, let's field it.
Is that for me?
Yeah, why not?
The answer is yes. I think that's going to change a lot as the game goes on. Early on, I would say in-game turn should take like a minute and a half. Because you just won't have as many options and there won't be as many ramifications. And as you build up your character, as the town builds up, all of a sudden you got a lot more to choose. You're probably discussing with whoever you're playing with. The thing with a cooperative game is a lot of times, if turns take a while, it's because you're
Hmm.
strategically talking about what it is you want to accomplish as a group. But if you're just focused on doing the turn, it should not take that long.
Yeah, and I would say that, so we have a tutorial experience, which is like 6 or 7 in-game turns. And I would say that probably takes 20-30 minutes, because there's, we're onboarding you during those 6 turns, where each day we're actually teaching you a new mechanic about the town and your specific character. So that's different, but then once you kind of get that, you're like, oh yeah, okay, every turn I do this. So it's really quick. And we're doing, because it is cooperative, we're doing mostly symmetrical play. At least right now, that's how we've been doing it. So as you're interacting in town, you're actually interacting in on your player, and you're doing this together. And so yeah, you're discussing what you want to do, what you want to accomplish in town, but largely you're working on your character and their player board. And so that's how it's going. And the second part of that question, how much in-game time will pass during this turn? So in Mythwind, there's 4 seasons, just like on our planet Earth. But unlike on our planet Earth, in Mythwind, each season is consists of 20 days, and so there's 80 days in a game year in Mythwind, and each turn is an in-game day. So we have 3 different phases. We have our dawn phase, our daytime phase, and our dusk phase. I think I got those 3 right. And each of those kind of take you through different process. And most of the work, at least, is what's happening with the core box, happens during the daytime phase. Except, who knows? Maybe our 5th player expansion is the thief that runs around at night and steals from people. But I don't think that fits the current vibe.
That's like the secret trader, not the trader, but the traitor.
Traitor. Yeah, the trader is no longer the trader, it's the merchant. Okay, the merchant. All right, hey, on that note, we've been live for 40 minutes, and so I want to pause us there. But this is fantastic, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Jordan on Facebook asked about any idea on the price, on the different pledge levels. Yes, there are ideas, but we're not going to be releasing those till a little bit before the campaign, I believe. So stay tuned for that, Jordan. And great. Well, thanks again, Nathan.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Cool. Have a great